Andy, of all our talks of football and politics, I forgot you'd gotten quite a bit of snow there lately. You
We
had
did.
gotten I we have not gotten any snow. It's been cold. Now it's going to warm up for the next week or so. But how was it with snow? Growing up, I remember like the Virginia was tough for snow sometimes. Things would shut down. In North Carolina, we closed for heavy rain sometimes.
We're kind of weak up here. I mean, we had some pretty good snowfalls when I was a kid, and we close if there's any threat of snow up here too. And some parts where I live in the western part of the county get pretty good snowfalls, but we had a good few inches this time around, and it was pretty cold and windy, so some of that became pretty harsh and slick for kids. But we had a good few inches up here. Although I don't know that the kids took advantage of it the way that we used to take advantage of it, Dave.
Well, what I used to love is snow day, right? Like you'd get a snow day, and like that kicked off a whole series of things. For some reason, it just was more magical, and you'd go outside, you'd do, you'd get with the neighbors, you'd try to play some snow football. That
Yeah.
was always fun, whatnot. What'd you do with that?
Yeah, so as a kid, like we do the same thing. We do snow football and snow soccer, which was impossible because the ball would go in every other direction except where you kicked it back then. But one of the things we used to love to do that I don't think kids do anymore, at least not in my neck of the woods here, is we'd go out there and we'd build these like ridiculously elaborate snow forts, and we'd have shelves and little holes, and we'd stack our snowballs. And even if there was nobody else to fight against, we'd still build those things. And then we would have snowball fights. We'd be throwing snow, and this was pretty good packing snow up here this time around. I mean, there was some snow you could make into a nice, soft snowball. And I was walking around my neighborhood the other night, walking my two pups around, who one of whom enjoys the snow way too much. And I was marveling at the fact that I live in a nice suburban community here, and a fair amount of kids. I saw one kind of half-built snowman. I think mom and dad might have started with their kids, and then no forts, no evidence of a good snowball fight, no evidence of good sledding.
No
You know,
sledding?
Not that I could see. I mean, I didn't walk by the main hill that we could use out here, near the elementary school, but I didn't see, like no evidence of kids being out there playing in the snow and having the really, jolly old time that you try to do, at least for a day or two, usually with a good snowfall, right? I mean, after a couple of days, you kind of want to stay inside and you're playing board games or video games or whatever. But that initial like excitement of going out there and playing, I didn't see any evidence of that. And I was kind of surprised. I was thinking, man, do we soften our kids too much? Of like they don't want to have snowball fights, they don't want a chance hurting each other in any way or anything. I'm not sure what it was, but I was like, this is not, I don't think the same way I would approach this back in 1986.
Yeah. No, I definitely remember all those days. Like the snow forts were always the greatest, and I'd love to try to build tunnels, like
Yeah,
connecting
and
different
fail
things.
and fail. They stunk most of the time, right? But you
Yeah,
try.
yeah, they definitely did. And then you would have the snowball fights across the street with the neighbor across the street or whatever, or you get
Yeah.
your buddies over. But I did always love the snow football. That was always a fun thing to do. I wonder, as I go around my neighborhood, and we got again, probably very similar to yours. We got like a park area here. It is very rare that I see like we used to after school we used to go down and play um football, and you could say tag football, but it was always tackle football,
Yeah.
and you do things like that. And I very rarely see it. And when I do see it, I am encouraged. I am like, oh my gosh, this is great. I wonder two things. One has just the video game culture, which it was existing at that time, early stages. I think we're getting
Yeah.
into Nintendo, the first Nintendo 64 that came out. I wonder if it's gone too far there because now you have so many interactive online games with like um, whether that's I don't know, Minecraft or whatever,
Yeah.
um, whether that's part of it, or if we have some other parts where this the kid who got hit with the snowball that had maybe a little piece of ice in it, and
Oh
now
yeah.
the
Every
the
time.
parent the parents threaten legal action on their neighbor now because of a snowball fight. I wonder if that has taken over too much in the culture.
Yeah, and you said like some of that stuff's always been around. I mean, all the games and playing has changed a lot over the years, and the origin of my Lions fandom actually goes back to neighborhood football back in the day. Dave, I think, and probably to who my best friend at the time was a year older than me and knew more than me about sports and everything, especially because I moved here, when I was around 4 or 5 years old. So he kind of like ushered me into all these cool American things, right? And I fell in love with football early. And back then, my neighborhood football team, and we play one-on-one, football. My team was the Lions, and I think that started my, favoring the Lions back then. And so, that's kind of stuff was really fun. My kids played, street football. They play here and they play that. So I think kids still do that. But you're right, it is just very different for sure. I remember one of the funniest moments as a kid. We used to have a playground in the middle of our neighborhood, surrounded by townhomes and the fences of those townhomes. And we'd go into the playground and play kickball. And that was great, right? You just boot that ball, and the older kids could kick it so far, and the little kid just running around trying your best to keep up. And I remember we had a corner unit, on our kickball field here, obviously. And it was an older couple, and they'd be out there grilling and enjoying themselves all the time. I remember one time the kickball flew over the fence, hit the top of their umbrella, on their table while they were cooking. I just remember the gentleman, older gentleman at the time, with a loud voice, and all the kids heard was, "Jesus, Joseph, and Mary." And we were all like, we were petrified, right? We were petrified that we made the older man angry. But that kind of stuff was just so fun and goofy. And I just don't know that it happens as much anymore. I think you're right. I think those overzealous parents that come out and scream and don't appreciate kids being kids. And we're probably all guilty of it a little bit, over time looking back. But it does seem to be a little bit different today than it was back then. And on the snow, I probably whined about the snow in front of my kids more than I should have, and helped indoctrinate them into snow hatred. Thus, my youngest son running to Florida for college.
All good stuff. All good stuff. Well, Andy, that was a good trip back to the '80s for us and our Generation X roots. So let's go on to other things. Andy, real quickly, want to hit on the politics front. Last night was New Hampshire. Donald Trump won well, pretty convincingly. I think he had won. They may have even declared before polls even opened. I think everyone pretty much is falling in line with the Trump nominee part. Obviously, Nikki Haley's vowed to continue to fight. She's got another month until South Carolina, and then another month from there until a Super Tuesday. Obviously, she's probably very disappointed. She's not been able to make, and I think this has been the challenge, I think, for many people. They just haven't been able to crack that outer Trump shell. I don't think many people, if you really pin them down, really like Donald Trump, but also at the same time, they think he's the best case for the Republican Party or whatever is left of the Republican Party. So thoughts on New Hampshire?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, briefly, I think the polling numbers in the end of the day, like, there's a bit take out. When you dig into them, you see the Republicans really did rally around, Donald Trump. I mean, the vast majority of Republicans voted for Donald Trump. Independents and undeclared, voted much stronger for Nikki Haley. I think it was like 3/4, 2/3, something like that. So there's some things to look at in that, and can that sort of polling keep up for her as she moves into other states, not all of which allow open primaries, although I think all states should. But at the end of the day, I was thinking about like the 10-point win by Donald Trump in and of itself, like just purely that number, without dissecting the who voted for who, isn't impressive in and of itself, right? I mean, this is the third time that Donald Trump has run for president, right? And he's the household name worldwide. He's basically running as an incumbent for the Republican Party. And the dynamic of Ron DeSantis, whose votes are much more aligned to Trump, dropping out the last minute, like that gives Trump a boost because those voters weren't going to Nikki Haley, and she wasn't running one-on-one against Donald Trump these last 2-3 months and beyond. She was running against multiple candidates. So in that sense, like a 10% victory isn't that impressive to me in and of itself, And so, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if I'm Nikki Haley, I'm looking to say, okay, I lost by 10%. Almost always, I could say, were Ron DeSantis votes. If they take those out, it's probably a pretty close race, as some of the polls were showing, right? 40-40 going in. And so now that there's two candidates, even though the Republican Party seems to be coalescing around Trump, remarkably, like the party should demand like legitimate debates between these two candidates at this point and say, look, there's two guys left here. You guys have to put it in front of the American voter and let them decide who they want to be the flag bearer here for the GOP. I think that would change things drastically, right? I mean, she was close in New Hampshire. I think she deserves a chance to debate with the guy, and if she does, I think that could change things a lot going into Super Tuesday. And look, Iowa, New Hampshire, great, wonderful parts of the union, but they're not North Carolina, Nevada, South Carolina, Texas. They're different states, and those voters might vote differently. I don't see this as the death bell for Nikki Haley unless her donors stop supporting her. I think it's interesting, but definitely it seems Republican voters for the most part are supporting Donald Trump. And again, one other thought there: the sooner you end up with a Biden Trump lock for their nominations, the sooner you open it up now for third parties to look really, really appealing and start running against these two very unappealing candidates. And so I think it's a blessing in a sense for Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden. It's also kind of dangerous because then Robert F. Kennedy and Cornel West and Jill Stein and who have the Libertarians nominate, and they're going to be able to really focus on these can't be America's only two choices, and that could make an impact. That could make an impact. So I think it's interesting, and with that, Dave, I'm bored of it already.
Yeah, I'm bored of it too. Obviously we'll keep talking about this as we go along. I think the challenge, there's two things. One, obviously, it's amazing to hear Trump's story continue to evolve in these victory speeches that he makes because he continues to like not litigate, but I think just like make up new stuff about the 2020 election. And
Yeah.
now he's claiming like COVID had an impact and everything. And people do forget, for all the things that Trump said about COVID and what people believe about the vaccine and mask mandates. The president at the time was Donald Trump, right? I mean, all these policies, you can't run from those policies, and you can't say Fauci made him do this, and Fauci made him do that. So,
Yeah.
but it's a tiresome act. It continues to be is, but I think people just it's Teflon Tom, right? I mean, nothing sticks to him. So for that's the one part. But I do think I know you're encouraged that maybe the third parties have more time to come out. My worry is people are just so disheartened. Nobody's going to come out to vote. I think we had record turnout last year or last election cycle with both of them getting over 70 million votes or in that neighborhood or whatnot. I think this time nobody wants to vote for Biden. He's not inspiring. He hasn't really done anything. They don't have the hatred for Trump that they did in 2020. And then for on the Trump side, again, he'll get his base, but he's not going to get those fringe voters, I don't think, this time either, because everyone's tired of that too. So, Andy, we've spent 5 more minutes on this than we probably should have. So,
Can I say one thing, Dave? Because you made me
yeah,
think.
yeah,
So here's the thing: at the end of the day, like take the third parties out because I do think they can make an impact. But let's say it's a Trump Biden one-on-one. Here's the basic thing: I don't know that Trump has won any voter that he didn't have before, right?
right.
And that's the problem for him because if you think about where things are and where they're probably going to be in November, 2020 was a tough time. It was a tough time. Like Trump might have won if not for COVID. I think that's possible. But it did happen. I mean, you look back at 2020, you're like, oh, that was kind of a shitty year. I mean, it was rough, right? It was rough for everybody. 2024, the economy's doing pretty good. There's crises around the world, but there's not really a crisis here in the U.S. I don't know that most American voters are saying, I need a major change and look back to 2020 and think, oh yeah, those were the good old days back in 2020. And without that like galvanizing event to say, hey, we need to get rid of the guy that's in the office right now, I think those voters that maybe aren't decided, those three Americans that don't know if they're going to vote for Biden or Trump if that's their only choice, I don't see them falling to Donald Trump because people don't want to usually change, if they're okay with where things are. So I don't really think I think Mr. Biden's in a better position if sort of the status quo continues to win, because I think reluctant voters would probably more likely fall in his camp than they would in Donald Trump's. That's my January assessment of things, but I kind of again think Donald Trump has a ceiling, and unless something changes, I don't think he can surpass that. And I think for all the support he gets from the Republican Party, it's not a majority of Americans, and it won't be on election day either. And I'll stop there, Dave. I just put that out
Yeah,
there.
no, I think it's a fair point. I think it's a fair point. So we'll see how that continues to go. Obviously, I'm intrigued by all the action and where this election will go. I just fundamentally can't believe we're going to have two 80-year-olds battling it out. 10 years, 15 years past their prime. So,
We'll come back to that some point too, Dave, and talk Ronald Reagan. I think that's another point to talk about there another day.
yeah. All right, Andy, let's get into our other topic here. And we had some fun last on earlier, referencing some Adam Sandler.
Yes.
So we thought we'd do a, top five Adam Sandler movies, and then maybe sprinkle in some honorable mentions here. Andy, when I was going through my list, this was a lot harder than I thought.
Yeah.
And because he's done so many movies, like he's
A
been,
ton. I mean, way more than I even remembered.
and that's the thing, he's been in so many different things, a lot more than and I think it's hard to like, a lot of people see him now and see him for some of these like the grown-ups movies, and that's where my kids saw him. But for
Yeah.
us, it was like Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore. It won't be surprised that those are near the top of my list.
Yeah.
But he had like 50 movies before Grown Ups, and
Yeah.
that's the crazy part about it. And
Yeah.
so Andy, without further ado, how do you want to do this? You want to go 5-1 and then honorable mentions, or you want to start with honorable mentions, or how do you want to do it?
Why don't we go honorable mentions 5-1? And I'm just going to put it out there before we even start that I cheated, and I'll just say that. So yeah, I say honorable mentions 5-1.
Okay, all right. So let's start off. So, how many honorable mentions did you?
I
How,
only
how
put
many
two.
honorable
I could have put more, but I limited it
Yeah.
to two. And also I'll just make this note before I start. Like, you know, everyone I picked except for the honorable mentions, I think, and one of my top fives, all mid '90s, late '90s movies and shows
Yeah.
and things like that. So, I'll note that as we go. But yeah, I think honorable mentions. I had two, Dave, that I put on the list.
All right. So I had three. So I'll go ahead and start with mine. Is I put Airheads as one of my honorable mentions. This is like before he even got big. I mean, he was still on Saturday Night Live. He had a bit role in this. He was a part, like Brendan Fraser was in this and
Yeah.
a couple of other things. But like I think that was a lot. His role, while limited, was excellent. So I went with Airheads there, Andy.
Yeah, he was so funny. I mean, everything he's done, he's been so unbelievably funny. Except when he's tried to be serious, but he's such a funny guy. But I'll just give you my two real quick, Dave. I think
Yeah.
one, I did anger management, which
Okay.
was a fun one. I mean, what a contrast of characters with him and Jack Nicholson, right? That was great. And then I put the Wedding Singer on having Billy Idol in the movie alone. It should be at least an honorable mention. But it was actually a fun movie, I thought, and similar to some of those goofy characters, but a little different storyline too. With Drew Barrymore and Billy Idol making appearances as well. So I thought those are both good, but not enough to crack into my top five.
All right, so I actually had both of those in my top five. I really enjoyed those movies, but
Yeah.
we'll talk more about those when we get to
Okay.
them. My other honorable mentions, Pixels. This
That
is
was
a
good.
recent one, but for some reason it is stupid. It's so dumb,
Yeah.
but that's exactly what those movies, like Adam Sandler and Kevin James is in that, and a couple other people
Yeah.
that you'd widely recognize. So I really enjoy that Pixels movie. And then the other one was what I mentioned on Monday, Bedtime Stories. I think that's another somewhat relatively recent one, but again, another fun one. Courtney Cox is in that. And so those are good. So I enjoyed those. I will rewatch those if they come on,
Yeah.
but I may not own them necessarily. All right, so Andy, 5-1. So why don't you go first? What's your number five?
Number five, Dave, 1999's Big Daddy. That was my
Oh,
number five. That was just it's such a good movie. He's such a
yeah.
funny character, and I thought it was again, it was a nice different version of Adam Sandler, right? I mean, it's the same goofy character, same goofy characters that he plays, but in a different role, different story. And I thought it was just really fun. Good, good contrast to the characters. Him playing a sort of temporary dad, and trying. It was a fun sort of evolution of the character, and just a lot of funny moments in there from peeing on the wall to interactions with the old man and his old balls. I thought that was a really good one. I thought so. That was my number five.
He's got old balls. Yeah, no, that's a good one. And I think that was where he started to transition a little bit more from just the pure stupid comedy to which was his stick for so long, to like trying to be a little more serious, but at the same
Yeah.
time have this thing. So all right, good pick there. That was definitely one that I considered. I did 50 First Dates here, Andy. And so I again I enjoyed it because it wasn't again that stupid comedy, but it wasn't overly serious. It got in with I can't even remember her name now. What's you just mentioned God, what's it? Anyways, so we had the 50 First Dates, and again, it won't surprise you that Wedding Singer was also in there. Drew Barrymore, for crying out loud. I don't know
Okay,
why
yeah, okay.
I'm
I forgot that was
I'm
her name.
doing shit in the bed there. But I went with 50 First Dates. Really enjoyed that movie. What I loved about all the Adam Sandler movies is all the ways that Rob Schneider can find his way to come into these movies, and you can do it.
Yeah.
So fun stuff there. So
So,
um,
I know I should say, like that's one that I think isn't as well known, and it's really one that I skipped because I didn't see it, was Uncut Gems, because I
oh
never
yeah,
saw
yeah.
it. And I heard that was really good, just never got to it, and so I might not appreciate him in a dramatic role in that one, right? But 51st Date, I think I saw it, and I don't think it really registered much on for me at the time. I think it was just during a busy time, and I don't really remember it very well. But I'm going to go back and check that one out, Dave.
Yeah. Andy, I'm making the thing on the fly because I realized I lift off something. So I'm going to add 50 First Dates in The Wedding Singer just because of the Drew Barrymore combination. That's my number five there.
Okay, all right, all right.
We're making things up as we go here, Andy. So that's where I'm going. All right. Where are you going for number four?
So number four was a catch-all for me, and I put down his run on Saturday Night Live from 1995. Reintroduced so many just hilarious moments. People forget how ridiculously funny he was on that show. That's where he introduced the Hanukkah song, which I'll come back to. But characters like Cajun Man and Opera Man were so stupid but so funny, and I just thought a lot of that became characters in his movies later in different forms. But it was just like his musical goofiness, his just character goofiness. I thought really came out, and even though some people didn't like him on SNL, he ended up getting canned after that '95 season. I think I thought it was hilarious, and he was fun to watch, had me laughing. If you go back now and put on Opera Man, it's still really funny. His reaction with the other cast members at that time. You mentioned Rob Schneider already. I thought it was really good, so I really enjoyed his SNL time, and I put that as my number four.
Yeah, when you talk about some of the heydays of SNL, and they're coming up on their big 50th anniversary here, I think next year. That early 90s run, so many great characters, so many great personalities. It's like when you look back at it now, you're like, how did all these people fit in the room together? Because it's so great on that front. All right, Andy, I'm going to go with number four is anger management. And
Okay.
again, you get this as your honorable mention. I just enjoyed it. I mean, because obviously you get Marissa Tomei in there. I think that was her in there, and then obviously Jack Nicholson, uh, like going round for round, and just the Jack Nicholson character was so good in that show,
Yeah.
and really pushed Adam Sandler's character to a whole new level. It was it was awesome, and I don't see it enough on TV because if I did, I would stop and watch it a little bit more. But I went with number four, anger management there.
I mean, it's just such contrasting characters. I mean, Jack Nicholson is such a powerful presence and dramatic actor. You'd never think of him sitting there across from Adam Sandler, one of the goofiest human beings alive, and it working so well, and it worked so well. I thought it really was a fun one.
Yeah, for sure. All right, where are you doing for three, Andy?
All right, Dave, number three, going to another form of media here, I think, or something that you and I think, sat together and laughed about and listened to many times together back in our college days. 1996 came out on 13th of February, right? So a little Valentine's Day gift from Adam Sandler right before Valentine's Day, 1996, when he released the "What the Hell Happened to Me" album. And definitely, as I mentioned on Monday, the capstone on that album to me is the Hanukkah song. I mean, it's just so freaking funny. I mean, it kicks off, right? David Lee Roth lights the menorah. I mean, and then you've got lines like, O.J. Simpson not a Jew, right? I mean, it's just hilarious, right? The whole thing is just hilarious. It's a long list of famous Jewish, personalities. Throws in a
Yeah.
couple of non-Jewish personalities. And it's just a hilarious song all around. I mean, I love that. But there's a lot more on there, right? There's Sex for Weightlifting, which you and I have sat there laughing stupidly at many times.
Yeah.
There's The Excited Southerner and The Goat. I mean, it's
The
just a
goat.
very funny album. And I think I at one point probably inappropriately, played that for my kids because like this is so funny, and they kind of said to me like, "What? Like this is not funny at all to me." And but it's hilarious, and I still love it. I think it's so funny, so stupid fun. Joining a cult and everything else. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's my number three, Dave. 1996 is What the Hell Happened to Me.
I enjoyed the cult one. That I think that's the lead track on that CD.
Mhm.
And so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would love to see Adam Sandler do stand up, like a
Yeah,
Netflix special or something. Hey, Andy, I'm disappointed that didn't wasn't on my list because we had so many great times there. But I'm glad you went there because that was such a great CD. So many good things on there. So many good a mix of songs and skits. Excellent stuff when comedians still did those things. Maybe they still do. You just don't see it as much anymore.
yeah,
Andy, for number three, I go to the Water Boy. This is just I don't talk
right,
about the references that Bobby Boucher
yeah,
references in like football and in and around watching sports. Like it's unbelievable. There's so many different good scenes in here. Hey, Water Boy, and all that good stuff. And of course, you had Henry Winkler in it,
yeah,
who plays a character for many people who like would only reference him like growing up that he was the Fonz, and then you see
right,
Henry Winkler play this old man who's got confidence issues is quite fun.
yeah,
But I enjoyed The Water Boy. Saw that multiple times. That was probably one of the early films I introduced my kids to with Adam Sandler, and they just loved it. So,
yeah, yeah. I'll come back to Waterboy, Dave, and part of my cheat here in just a moment.
okay.
But yeah, it's a great movie. It's a great movie.
All right. We're down to the final two, Andy. I obviously have a probably strong opinion where you're going here. So, where are you doing for number two?
So I mean, I surprise you with number two here. This is where I broke from my '90s timeline a little bit, and I put "You Don't Mess with the Zohan," which came out in
Oh my
2008.
God, yes.
It's again, it was a little bit of a different character. I mean, he still had all his goofy humor, but he also had some serious-ish moments in there. Touched on sort of some of the like we have today. Everything's got a political side, and kind of touched on the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict in different ways, and it's just so freaking funny though, right? From his giant pubic hair that he's so proud of, right? To the whole storyline, his martial arts, mayhem, and I just thought it was a fun mix of humor, action, goofiness. I mean, like the whole character is just such a goofy. His fascination with was it Paul Mitchell, I think, hair, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Silky smooth. I mean, it was just so funny, and I thought it was a fun, different Adam Sandler movie, but still Adam Sandler, doing what he does so well and just making you laugh while entertaining us with jet skis and fights on boats and things of that nature. I thought it was good, so I put that as my number two.
See, this is what I mean about like so many of his movies are so good that you forget all of these ones in there. And Zohan was definitely one of those ones that I
Yeah,
love. The opening sequence on that is amazing. And John Turturro,
he's awesome.
he was awesome in that.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He even had a Dave Matthews playing the white supremacist in that movie, which is quite good. The hairdressing scenes
They're
are
great.
amazing.
Yeah,
Silky smooth for sure. Okay, Andy, I go with, and I'm sure now I know where you're going. You're lumping everything into number one here, but I go with Happy Gilmore. It's without a doubt, like from start to finish, one of the funniest things, and you can see how long those characters live on because there's a Twitter account with Shooter McGavin.
yeah,
Even the actor Chris McDonald, who plays Shooter McGavin, lives up to his role when people see him out there and meet you on the ninth hole at nine or something. All those fun
yeah,
things that went on with Happy Gilmore, and that was even Julie Bowen was in that early on. I had an early crush on her growing up. But she was great. Carl Weathers in
So
that
funny.
movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
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 good.
good top to bottom. All right, Andy, what are you doing to wrap up for number one?
Yeah, so I think you saw where I was going with this, Dave, and this is where I had to cheat, right? Because those early movies, they were all kind of the same movie, right? It's just variations of bigger themes, but they're all such similar characters, but all distinct, as well. And so I kind of mashed together that collection of mid '90s movies. Look, 1995, Billy Madison; 1996, Happy Gilmore; 1998, The Water Boy. Those are
Yeah.
three Adam Sandler classics, and I thought rather than list them out as one, two, three, because I don't know which one I do, one, two, or three, to be honest. I just put them together, sort of that mid '90s, just hilarious run, a triumvirate of movies there. Um, and they're all just they're great. I mean, even last night I was texting with one of my sons and made a Billy Madison reference. There's just they were so funny, so good. Adam Sandler is being to me, his best, right? Hilarious, a little bit of dramatic acting. I mean, he's a good actor. Right? I mean, he's a good
Yeah.
actor, but he's such a funny actor, and funny in what he says, funny in how he says it, funny in his physicality, and there's just that part of him that's such a good teenage boy that makes stupid human teenage boy jokes that every guy finds funny. Maybe some females find funny, maybe some think this is stupid teenage humor, and they're right, and that's what makes it great, right? When he's going through the scene of putting every object he can find between his legs and simulating it being his cock and balls, like it's hilarious. It's hilarious. He's just so funny, and so I put those three together as Adam Sandler at his very best in that mid '90s run with Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, and Waterboy.
Yeah, I will tell you that I mean, Billy Madison for me was like what started it all for, I mean, there's just so many different ways that you can go there. And again, another one of these, like, I don't disagree with the way you did it because from start to finish on all three of those movies are it's just nonstop. And
Yeah,
like, think about all the references that we make these days on Billy Madison, the penguin scenes on Billy Madison. So that Billy Madison is my number one, but
yeah.
like the penguin scene, it's too damn hot for a penguin to be just walking around here. That kind of stuff is just it's amazing. So Andy, this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing this. We'll definitely have to do it for some other things. I know we've got some Arnold stuff coming up. We probably could go through some YouTube, and a bunch of other things for sure. Maybe we should do like an action movies, like gratuitous action
So
movie.
hard, so hard.
So, all right, Andy. Well, we'll wrap up this podcast for this day. We've got to look forward to Friday where we can get a check in on where you're at with the sports. But a lot of fun doing this with you, Andy, and we'll catch up with you next time.